In the vast expanse of the galaxy where ancient civilizations whispered tales around the glow of dying stars, there existed a legend so terrifying that even the most battle-hardened warriors would fall silent when it was spoken. They called them the Ghosts of Sol, creatures of myth and nightmare that supposedly emerged from a dead system at the galaxy's edge. For 10,000 years, no species had seen them. No probe had detected their homeworld. No signal had been intercepted from their alleged domain. The academic councils of a dozen major civilizations had long since classified humans as nothing more than shared cultural mythology, stories that spacefaring races told to frighten their young and explain the unexplainable, until the day the sensors across 3 star systems simultaneously detected the same impossible signature. Hundreds of vessels moving in perfect formation, their hulls absorbing light like hungry shadows, bearing technologies that defied every known law of physics. The readings were so unprecedented that most observers dismissed them as equipment malfunctions. But Admiral Thexkar of the Hegemony Fleet knew better. As the first human dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace above the peaceful world of Kepler Prime, its massive bulk blotting out the system's twin suns, he realized with dawning horror that some myths were far more real than anyone had dared to imagine. The humans had not been hiding. They had been preparing, and now they had come to collect on 10 millennia of forgotten debts. The emergency klaxon screamed through the crystal spires of Kepler Prime's orbital defense station as Senior Communications Officer Zareth frantically worked her console. Her forearms moved in perfect synchronization, each hand dancing across different interfaces as streams of data flooded her screens. The readings made no sense. Massive gravitational anomalies appearing throughout the outer system. Energy signatures that registered off every known scale, and most disturbing of all, complete radio silence from the automated sensor platforms that had been monitoring the system's edge for the past 3 centuries. Admiral Thexkar to the bridge immediately, Zaratha transmitted, her usually steady voice betraying the first hints of panic. The Hegemony's most decorated naval commander had seen action in 7 major conflicts, but nothing had prepared any of them for what was happening now. Admiral Thexkar arrived within minutes, his massive crystalline form reflecting the red warning lights that bathed the command center. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his species had evolved from living minerals on a high-gravity world, making them natural commanders due to their ability to withstand extreme conditions. His deep voice resonated through the chamber as he surveyed the tactical displays. Report. We're detecting incoming vessels from multiple vectors. Initial count suggests over 400 individual ships, ranging from escort class to something our computers can't properly classify. Zareth's secondary eyes remained fixed on her console, while her primary pair met the Admiral's gaze. The largest signatures are, she paused, double-checking her readings, approximately 12 kilometers in length. The Admiral's crystalline features hardened. In his extensive military career, he had never encountered a single vessel longer than 4 kilometers. The idea of ships nearly 3 times that size seemed impossible. The structural engineering alone would require materials and techniques far beyond current galactic understanding. Sir, another officer called from across the bridge. We're receiving similar reports from the Nexus Station and Outer Rim Command. Whatever this is, it's happening simultaneously across 3 star systems. Admiral Thexkar moved to the primary tactical display, his mineral fingers tracing the projected paths of the incoming vessels. The formation was unlike anything in the naval databases, not the scattered approach of raiders nor the rigid formations of traditional military fleets. Instead, these ships moved in flowing organic patterns that seemed to adapt and shift even as they maintained perfect coordination. Computer, analyze formation patterns and cross-reference with known military doctrines, he commanded. The response came immediately. No matches found in current databases. Formation patterns do not correspond to any known species' tactical preferences. Recommend expanding search to historical archives. Do it. Minutes passed as the station's powerful computers sifted through thousands of years of recorded military history. Meanwhile, the mysterious fleet continued its approach, still maintaining complete radio silence despite numerous hailing attempts from the Hegemony forces. Sir, the computer announced, partial pattern matches found in archived mythological databases. Closest correlation, tactical formations attributed to legendary human forces in pre-contact folklore. The bridge fell silent. Even the youngest officer present had heard the old stories. Tales of a species so adaptable and ruthless that they had supposedly conquered their entire home system before mysteriously vanishing from galactic affairs. Most scholars considered these stories to be ancient propaganda, designed to unite the various species against a common mythical enemy. "That's impossible," whispered Navigation Officer Kethmore, his tentacles writhing nervously. "Humans are just legends. Ancient stories used to scare children." Admiral Fexcar stared at the display, his mind racing through the implications. "Computer, what do we know about the mythical human homeworld?" According to archived folklore, humans originated from the Sol system, located at galactic coordinates 24723 by 156,007. System contains a single G-type star and multiple planetary bodies. No recorded contact or exploration attempts in recorded history. The Admiral's blood chilled as he realized the incoming fleet's trajectory traced back exactly to those coordinates. How long since the last probe was sent to the Sol system? No probes have ever been sent to Sol system. Area classified as mythologically significant but scientifically irrelevant by Galactic Survey Command approximately 8,000 years ago. Before Admiral Fexcar could respond, the tactical display suddenly flared with new contacts. The mystery fleet had begun to decelerate, their exotic propulsion systems creating interference patterns that scrambled sensors across the system. But what emerged from the sensor static made every being on the bridge step back in shock. The ships were unlike anything they had ever seen. Where most galactic civilizations built their vessels with smooth, curved hulls designed for efficiency, these craft were angular and aggressive. They bristled with weapons emplacements, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Most unsettling of all, they bore markings that matched ancient symbols found in archaeological sites across dozens of worlds, symbols that scholars had always attributed to shared mythological traditions. "Sir," Zareth announced, her voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving a transmission. Put it through." The main screen flickered, then resolved into an image that sent shockwaves through the assembled officers. The being that appeared was bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall, with pale skin and dark hair, but it was the eyes that truly unsettled them, cold, calculating, and utterly alien in their intensity despite the familiar humanoid appearance. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Retribution," the figure spoke, her voice carried by translation protocols that somehow managed to convey both authority and barely contained fury. "I represent the United Earth Systems and the Human Colonial Alliance. For 10,000 years, your species and others have treated us as myths and legends, while you've occupied worlds that were once ours." Admiral Fexcar stepped forward, his training overriding his shock. "I am Admiral Fexcar of the Hegemony Defense Fleet. If you represent a legitimate government, why have you remained hidden for so long? Why do our records show no evidence of your civilization?"
Captain Chen's expression hardened. "Hidden?"
"We haven't been hiding, Admiral. We've been growing, learning, preparing. While your precious Galactic Council debated whether we ever existed, we've been building an empire that spans 3 spiral arms. We've colonized worlds you haven't even discovered yet." The implications hit the Admiral like a physical blow. If humans had truly been expanding for 10 millennia while remaining undetected, their technological capabilities might be centuries ahead of the known galactic civilizations. "What do you want?" he asked. "Justice," Chen replied simply. 10,000 years ago, our ancestors were driven from their homes by a coalition of species who saw us as a threat to their established order. They destroyed our colonies, scattered our fleets, and then convinced themselves we were too primitive to matter. They relegated us to mythology to ease their guilty consciences. She gestured to something off-screen, and the tactical displays around the bridge lit up with new contacts. Not just ships, massive orbital installations, mobile space docks, and what appeared to be entire artificial worlds moving into position throughout the system. "We've spent every day of those 10,000 years remembering that betrayal," Chen continued. "We've prepared for this moment, the day we would return to reclaim what was taken from us. The hegemony, the Nexus Confederation, The Outer Rim Alliance. You've all built your civilizations on the bones of human colonies. Admiral Thexkar felt his crystalline structure vibrating with stress frequencies. That was 10,000 years ago. None of the current governments were involved in those ancient conflicts. Surely we can find a diplomatic solution. Chen's laugh was devoid of any warmth. Diplomatic? Your predecessor species said the same thing when they first encountered us. They spoke of peace while their fleets burned our worlds. They offered friendship while their soldiers slaughtered our civilians. They promised coexistence while their politicians debated whether we deserved to be classified as sentient beings. The screen shifted to show a tactical overview of the system. Red markers indicated human forces, and the Admiral realized with growing horror that they had completely surrounded every major installation and population center. The hegemony's vaunted defenses hadn't even detected their approach until they were already in position. You have 12 hours to begin evacuation of Kepler Prime, Chen announced. After that, we will consider any remaining hegemony forces to be hostile and act accordingly. Evacuation? There are over 2 billion beings on Kepler Prime. Evacuation is impossible in 12 hours. Then I suggest you start immediately, Chen replied coldly. We've waited 10,000 years for justice. We won't wait any longer. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Admiral Thexkar stared at the tactical display, trying to process the magnitude of what they faced. The human fleet wasn't just large. It was impossibly advanced. Their ships showed no energy signatures that hegemony sensors could identify. Their weapons were completely unknown, and their technology seemed to operate on principles that defied current scientific understanding.
Sir,
Zarath whispered. What are your orders? The Admiral looked around at his crew, beings from 6 different species who had served together through countless crises. They looked to him for leadership, for answers, for hope. But for the first time in his military career, Admiral Thexkar had no idea what to do. Begin emergency evacuation procedures, he said finally. Contact Hegemony High Command and the Galactic Council. Tell them, he paused, still struggling to believe what he was about to say. Tell them the humans have returned. As his crew sprang into action, Admiral Thexkar remained at the tactical display, watching as more human ships continued to emerge from the darkness between stars. Each new contact represented a level of technological sophistication that his civilization couldn't match, commanded by beings who had spent 10 millennia nursing their hatred. The age of myths and legends was over. The age of reckoning had begun. Outside the station's viewports, the first human dreadnought moved into position above Kepler Prime, its massive bulk casting shadows across entire continents. In the cities below, billions of beings looked up at the sky and saw their comfortable assumptions about the universe crumbling away. The humans had returned, and they had not come in peace. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of Admiral Thexkar's report. But the magnificent chamber on Nexus Prime had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Representatives from 47 different species filled the circular amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds, electromagnetic pulses, and chemical signals that the universal translators struggled to process simultaneously. Council Speaker Vorthak, an ancient being whose gas-based consciousness had witnessed over 3,000 years of galactic history, attempted to maintain order as reports flooded in from across known space. The humans weren't limiting their activities to the Kepler system. They had simultaneously appeared in 17 different star systems, each time with overwhelming force and identical ultimatums. Order! I will have order in this chamber! Vorthak's projected voice boomed through the translation matrix. Representative Quindar of the Archaeological Council has information relevant to our current crisis. The spindly insectoid rose from her designated platform, her multifaceted eyes gleaming under the chamber's lights. Honored colleagues, I have spent the past 6 hours reviewing our most ancient archives. What we face is not an invasion by an unknown species. It is the return of humanity, exactly as prophesied in texts we dismissed as mythology. A wave of concerned chatter swept through the assembly. Representative Zoktel of the Outer Rim Alliance leaned forward, his cybernetic implants glowing with agitation. Mythology? You're suggesting we take action based on ancient fairy tales? Quindar's wings buzzed with irritation. These fairy tales contain detailed specifications of human technology, tactical doctrines, and psychological profiles that match exactly what we're observing. The archives speak of humans as the most adaptable species ever encountered, capable of thriving in any environment, learning any skill, and holding grudges for generations. She activated a holographic display that showed ancient star charts and battle formations. According to these records, the original human civilization controlled over 200 star systems before the Great Purge 10,000 years ago. They were driven out not because they were weak, but because they were becoming too powerful too quickly. That's preposterous, interrupted Representative Mexrath of the Core Worlds. No species could maintain technological advancement for 10,000 years while remaining completely hidden. Unless they weren't trying to hide, Quindar replied grimly. What if they were simply expanding in directions we never thought to look? The archives mention human colony seeds, self-sustaining generation ships capable of traveling between galaxies. What if they didn't retreat? What if they've been building an empire beyond our borders this entire time? The implications sent shockwaves through the assembly. If humans had been colonizing other galaxies while the known species fought over their local territories, they could have built an empire of unimaginable scope and power. Speaker Vorthak processed this information with growing alarm. What do the archives say about human military capabilities? They don't fight like us, Quindar answered, her voice heavy with foreboding. Most species develop specialized roles: warriors, engineers, diplomats. Humans excel at everything. They adapt their tactics to exploit each enemy's weaknesses, they innovate during combat, and they never forget a defeat. The ancient texts describe them as the universe's perfect predators. A new voice cut through the discussion as Ambassador Kalmtar of the Hegemony entered the chamber, his usually immaculate crystalline form showing stress fractures. Council members, I bring dire news from the Kepler system. The human deadline has passed. The chamber fell silent as Kalmtar activated a real-time feed from Kepler Prime. The planet's surface was visible through the viewport of an evacuation transport, but something was wrong. The familiar blue and green world was now partially shrouded in a golden haze that seemed to pulse with its own internal light. What are we looking at? Speaker Vorthak asked. The humans call it a planetary conversion field. Kelmtar replied, his voice hollow with shock. They've somehow altered the planet's atmospheric composition. According to their broadcast, Kepler Prime is being returned to Earth normal parameters, whatever that means. On the display, they could see massive machines descending from the human fleet. Each device was the size of a city. Their purpose is unknown, but their scale absolutely terrifying. They settled into position across the planet's surface and began emitting the golden energy field that was slowly transforming the entire world. The hegemony evacuation efforts managed to save roughly 30% of the population, Kalmtar continued. The humans didn't interfere with the rescue operations, but they made it clear that anyone remaining after their deadline was choosing to become human citizens under human law. Representative Quindar's wings drooped with realization. They're not conquering worlds, they're reclaiming them. The ancient texts mention that humans could adapt any planet to suit their biology. They're turning our worlds into copies of their original homeworld. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out in system after system. The human fleets didn't engage in traditional orbital bombardments or ground invasions. Instead, they systematically transformed entire worlds, making them suitable for human habitation, while forcing the existing populations to flee or adapt to the new conditions. But it was the psychological warfare that proved most effective. Every human transmission contained the same message: detailed historical records of the ancient conflicts, complete with names, dates, and documented atrocities committed by the ancestors of the current galactic species. They weren't invaders, they were survivors returning home after 10 millennia of exile. On Nexus Prime, the council chamber erupted into chaos as representatives received updates from their home systems. The Vegan Collective reported human ships massing near their outer colonies. The Silicon Brotherhood detected massive construction projects beginning in previously empty star systems. The Aquatic Alliance found their deep space monitoring stations had been replaced with human installations seemingly overnight. "This is impossible," shouted Representative Torgan of the Military Coalition. No force could coordinate attacks across 17 systems simultaneously while remaining undetected. Our sensor network should have given us years of advance warning, unless their technology is so advanced that our sensors simply can't detect them, Quindar suggested quietly. The archives mention that humans were always exceptional engineers and scientists. 10,000 years of uninterrupted research and development could have produced capabilities we can't even comprehend. Speaker Vorthak struggled to maintain order as panic spread through the chamber. What are their demands? Surely there must be some basis for negotiation. Ambassador Kelmtar consulted his datapad with trembling hands. They've transmitted a formal declaration to all major governments. They're demanding the return of all star systems that were originally human colonies, reparations for the refugees and casualties of the Great Purge, and recognition of human sovereignty over what they call the Soul Expansion Zone, which apparently includes most of the outer galactic spiral arms. The scope of human ambitions became clear as tactical displays throughout the chamber updated to show the claimed territory. The humans weren't seeking a few worlds or a single sector. They were claiming ownership of nearly half the galaxy, including some of the most strategically important systems. They can't expect us to simply abandon entire civilizations, Representative Mexrath protested. Some of these worlds have been inhabited by our people for thousands of years. According to their broadcasts, Kelmtar replied grimly, those worlds were human colonies first. They're offering generous relocation assistance to any non-humans willing to evacuate peacefully, but they're making it clear that they consider these territories to be rightfully theirs under what they call original settlement law. The ancient legal doctrine was one that most species had abandoned millennia ago, but the humans were apparently still operating under its principles. Any world they had settled first remained their property in perpetuity, regardless of subsequent occupation by other species. As the Council debated response options, new reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. Human ships were emerging from previously empty space near dozens of major trade routes. More disturbing still, they seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect, targeting infrastructure, supply lines, and defensive installations with surgical precision that suggested incredibly detailed intelligence gathering. How could they know our system so well? Representative Zoktel wondered aloud. Our defensive plans are classified at the highest levels. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yilnov, the Council's chief xenoarchaeologist, had been quietly analyzing human communications during the debate. Council members, I believe I know how they've obtained such detailed intelligence. The humans aren't using spies or infiltrators. They're using us. The chamber fell silent as Dr. Yilnov explained his discovery. Every piece of archaeological research, every historical survey, every deep space exploration report filed with the Galactic Database over the past 10,000 years has been automatically distributed to member species' academic networks. If humans have been monitoring our communications, they've essentially had access to a continuously updated map of our entire civilization. The full scope of human preparation became clear. While the galactic species had been focused on local conflicts and territorial disputes, the humans had been patiently watching, learning, and planning. Every expansion, every new colony, every military installation had been cataloged and analyzed by human intelligence services. They've been studying us for 10,000 years, Speaker Vorthak realized with growing horror. They know our capabilities, our weaknesses, our internal politics better than we know ourselves. But the most chilling revelation came from the Kepler system, where human broadcasts had begun detailing their long-term intentions. The planetary conversion of Kepler Prime was just the beginning. The humans possessed technology that could reshape entire solar systems, moving planets into optimal orbits, adjusting stellar output, and creating vast artificial habitats. They weren't just reclaiming their original territory, they were transforming it into something beyond current galactic comprehension. The broadcast spoke of stellar engineering projects and galactic-scale infrastructure development that suggested capabilities far exceeding anything the known species could imagine. As the council session stretched into its 8th hour, a new transmission arrived from the Human Fleet Command. The main display activated to show Captain Sarah Chen once again, But she was no longer alone. Behind her stood figures representing what appeared to be dozens of different human subspecies or ethnicities, each adapted for different environments and conditions. "Members of the Galactic Council," Chen began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, "we appreciate your democratic process, but our patience has limits. We offer you one final opportunity for peaceful resolution." She gestured to her companions. "These representatives come from human colonies established throughout the Andromeda Galaxy, the Magellanic Clouds, and 17 other galactic clusters. Our expansion never stopped. It simply moved beyond your limited sphere of awareness." The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If humans had successfully colonized other galaxies, their population and resource base could be thousands of times larger than any known species could match. "We offer the current inhabitants of our ancestral worlds a choice," Chen continued. "Peaceful relocation with full support for establishing new colonies in unclaimed systems, or integration into human society under human law. But we will not negotiate away our birthright." The transmission ended with a star map that showed the true scope of human space, a vast network of colonies, installations, and industrial complexes spanning multiple galaxies. The small spiral arm that contained all known galactic civilization was just a tiny portion of humanity's true domain. Speaker Vorthak looked around at the assembled representatives, seeing his own despair reflected in their various alien features. They faced an enemy that outnumbered them, outgunned them, and had spent 10 millennia preparing for this exact moment. The age of galactic cooperation was ending. The age of human dominance had begun. 6 months after the human return, Admiral Thexker stood on the observation deck of the UES Retribution, watching as massive construction ships reshaped the Kepler system's asteroid belt into something that defied his understanding of engineering. The human vessel that had once seemed impossibly large now felt almost cozy compared to the megastructures taking shape throughout the system. Its crystalline form had adapted to the ship's atmosphere, a testament to human environmental technology that could accommodate dozens of different alien physiologies simultaneously. The irony wasn't lost on him that he, once the hegemony's most decorated admiral, now served as a liaison officer in the human fleet. "The integration process is proceeding faster than our most optimistic projections," Captain Chen remarked as she joined him at the viewport. Over the months, Thexkar had learned to read human expressions, and Chen's satisfaction was evident despite her typically controlled demeanor. "I still don't understand how you're accomplishing this," Thexkar admitted, gesturing toward the construction site. "Those ships are building structures larger than most planets. The energy requirements alone should be impossible." Chen smiled, an expression that had taken weeks for Thexkar to interpret correctly. "Admiral, you're thinking in terms of your old limitations. When humanity was exiled from this galaxy, we didn't just survive. We evolved. We learned to harness the power of entire stars, to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to think on timescales that span geological epochs." Through the viewport, Thexkar could see the fruits of that evolution. The asteroid belt was being transformed into a massive ring habitat that would house billions of beings in conditions tailored to their specific needs. Hegemony refugees who had feared conquest instead found themselves offered citizenship in a civilization that operated on principles they could barely comprehend. "The Galactic Council's resistance is crumbling faster than expected," Thexkar reported, consulting his datapad. "The vegan collective formally surrendered yesterday after seeing what you did to their military fleets. The Battle of Vega had lasted exactly 14 minutes. The collective's Grand Armada, assembled from 6 different species and representing the pinnacle of galactic military technology, had been neutralized without a single human casualty. The humans hadn't destroyed the ships, they had simply turned off their power systems using some form of directed electromagnetic pulse that bypassed every known shielding technology. We don't want to rule through fear, Chen explained. Intimidation is just the fastest way to establish the new order. Once beings realize what we're offering, resistance becomes irrelevant. She gestured toward another section of the construction zone, where human engineers worked alongside volunteers from dozens of species. Look at them, Admiral. Hegemony crystal shapers working with Aquatic Alliance bioengineers and Silicon Brotherhood quantum programmers. When was the last time you saw such cooperation?
Thexkar had to admit she was right.
The old galactic civilization had been built on a complex web of alliances, trade agreements, and mutual antagonisms that kept different species in separate spheres. The humans had simply ignored those boundaries, treating all sentient beings as potential citizens of their expanding empire. The transformation wasn't limited to physical infrastructure. Human social scientists had analyzed 10,000 years of galactic history and identified the fundamental flaws in the old system. Instead of competing nation-states, they were building an integrated civilization where each species contributed their unique strengths to collective projects. The Nexus Confederation is requesting terms for peaceful integration. Thexkar continued. They're offering to turn over their historical archives and provide full disclosure of their military capabilities. Excellent. Dr. Park will be pleased. She's been trying to piece together the complete history of the Purge. Chen's expression darkened slightly. Some species participated more enthusiastically than others in driving us out. Justice will be proportional. This was the one aspect of human nature that still troubled Thexkar. Their capacity for forgiveness was matched only by their ability to remember every slight. Species that had been minor players in the ancient conflict found themselves offered generous terms for integration, while the primary architects of the Purge faced much stricter conditions. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The viewport surface transformed into a communications screen showing Dr. Hofa. Elena Park, the chief human xenohistorian. Her appearance was striking even by human standards. Genetic modifications had given her enhanced cognitive capabilities and extended lifespan, allowing her to process vast amounts of historical data with perfect recall. Captain Chen, Admiral Thexkar, I have the final analysis from the Hegemony archives, Dr. Park announced. The historical review confirms what we suspected. The Hegemony's role in the Purge was primarily logistical. They provided supply bases and intelligence but weren't involved in the actual military campaigns against human colonies. Thexkar felt a wave of relief that translated into subtle harmonic frequencies through his crystalline structure. The human ability to distinguish between levels of historical responsibility meant that his people would face relatively lenient integration terms. Recommended classification? Chen asked. Category 2 integration. Full citizenship rights after a probationary period. Retention of cultural autonomy, participation in the colonial expansion program. Dr. Park's recommendations carried enormous weight in determining the fate of entire civilizations. Approved, Chen replied. Admiral, you can inform your people that the Hegemony will be offered full partnership status within the Human Colonial Alliance. Your crystal-shaping technology will be invaluable for the stellar engineering projects. The speed and efficiency of human decision-making still amazed Thexkar. Where the old Galactic Council had required months of debate to make minor policy changes, human leadership could restructure entire civilizations with a few brief consultations. There's something else, Dr. Park continued. The deep analysis of galactic communications has revealed an unexpected development. Several species have been attempting to make contact with extragalactic civilizations, presumably seeking military assistance against us. Chen's expression turned cold. Which species? The Outer Rim Alliance has been broadcasting distress signals toward the Magellanic Clouds, apparently unaware that we've controlled those territories for the past 8,000 years. More concerning, the core worlds have been attempting to contact civilizations in the direction of the Andromeda Galaxy. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so dangerous. The galactic species were desperately trying to call for help from the very human colonies they hoped would oppose the soul expansion. Response options? Chen asked. I recommend direct intervention. Our Andromedan colonies have intercepted the core world's transmissions and are prepared to respond. A demonstration of human ubiquity should end any hopes of outside intervention. Within hours, the core worlds received their answer. Instead of potential alien allies, their long-range communications were answered by Admiral Jiang Wei of the Andromedan Human Defense Force. His transmission showed not only human ships but also representatives of dozens of species that had thrived under human administration for millennia. The message was simple. Humanity didn't just control this galaxy's future, they controlled most of the local galactic cluster. Any species hoping for rescue from human expansion would find only more humans, backed by loyal alien allies who had prospered under the new order. The psychological impact was devastating. Across the galaxy, resistance movements collapsed as the reality of human dominance became undeniable. The species that had once driven humanity into exile found themselves facing descendants who had used their forced diaspora to build an empire spanning multiple galaxies. But the humans didn't gloat over their victory. Instead, they began implementing integration programs that surpassed anything the old Galactic Council had ever attempted. Species that surrendered peacefully found themselves offered opportunities their ancestors could never have imagined. The Aquatic Alliance discovered that human genetic engineering could allow their people to survive in environments previously thought impossible. The Silicon Brotherhood learned that human quantum computers could enhance their already impressive computational abilities. Even the proud hegemony found that human stellar engineering projects offered them chances to create crystal formations on a scale that dwarfed their homeworld's natural wonders. "Admiral," Chen said as they watched the latest group of refugees board transport ships bound for new colony worlds, "what do you think of our approach to integration?" Thexkar considered the question carefully. "In my military experience, conquest usually involves subjugation and exploitation. What you're doing is different. You're not just taking over our worlds, you're making them better. That's because we learned something during our exile that your species never understood," Chen replied. "True strength comes not from dominating others, but from helping them reach their full potential. Every species in this galaxy has unique capabilities that we can amplify and improve." She gestured toward the construction zones where mixed teams of humans and aliens worked on projects that would have been impossible for any single species to attempt. The old galactic civilization was limited by competition and mistrust. "Our new order is built on cooperation and mutual benefit." The proof was already visible throughout human-controlled space. Worlds that had been marginal colonies under the old system were being transformed into thriving centers of innovation and culture. Species that had been trapped by their biological limitations were finding new possibilities through human technology and philosophy. As the months turned to years, the integration process accelerated. The last holdout governments found themselves increasingly isolated as their own populations demanded access to human medical technology, educational systems, and economic opportunities. The benefits of human citizenship were simply too attractive to ignore. Admiral Thexkar eventually found himself commanding a mixed human-alien fleet tasked with exploring previously unmapped regions of the galaxy. His crew included beings from 17 different species, all working together with an efficiency that the old separate military forces had never achieved. The ancient myths and legends about humanity had portrayed them as terrifying conquerors who would bring darkness and chaos to the galaxy. The reality was far more profound. They had returned as architects of a new age, builders of a civilization that transcended the petty boundaries and limitations of the past. Standing on the bridge of his new command, watching as human and alien engineers worked together to construct a massive space station that would serve as a gateway to even more distant galaxies, Admiral Thexkar finally understood the true scope of human ambition. They hadn't returned to reclaim their old territory. They had returned to show the galaxy what it could become when artificial barriers were removed and all sentient beings worked toward common goals. The age of myths was over. The age of unity had begun. And in the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal journey outward, carrying representatives of dozens of species toward new worlds and new possibilities that none of them could have achieved alone. The stars themselves seemed brighter now, illuminated not by the fires of war, but by the light of cooperation between beings who had once thought themselves too different to coexist. In learning to think beyond the boundaries of single worlds or single species, humanity had created something greater than empire. They had created a true galactic civilization. The universe was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. And now, for the first time in 10,000 years, all the children of the galaxy would explore it together.